Hello, everyone. This is Tina Heisman, Certified Master Life Coach. This is my weekly live marriage coaching call where I try to share tips that will help you in your marriage. So we have a great topic for today, but before we get started, I want to let you know that I have a free private Happy Wives community on Facebook where you can come to get inspiration for your marriage. You can find it at facebook.com/groups/the Happy Wives community. If that's all too much to handle or write down right now, head over to my website at tinaheisman.com, and there's a banner at the bottom of the front page. You can just click on it. Also, I have created a free download called the Marriage Makeover Guide. It's a guide to help you make over your marriage into a happier, more joyful, peaceful place. So if you visit my website, you can download it. Again, that's tinaheisman.com. It will give you a specific formula that you can use for handling conflicts that you might have in your marriage. All right, ladies, I think we'll dive in. Our topic for today's call is how to have a difficult conversation with your spouse. This is one that I hear a lot of need for from clients and other women. So let's just jump right in. Sometimes in marriage, if there's something our spouse is doing, we might hint around that we want them to change it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And then on the flip side of that, a lot of women that I talk to they're just trying to hold it in, and it just keeps building and building and building, and then one day it just explodes out. And so that's not a good result either. And that's really where we as the wives, show up. We're feeling bothered by something our husband is doing or is not doing. And then that makes us feel unloved, or maybe like he doesn't respect us, or maybe like we're carrying way more than our share of the weight. And that's a complaint that I hear a lot from women. So you'd like to talk to your husband about it. You'd like to get it resolved. Maybe you don't really want to talk about it. But how do you do it? How do you go about having this conversation without causing a fight? And I think that's what a lot of women are afraid of, because they've gone there and ended up with a fight, and that is not what they want. So it's important for us women to know that if we don't speak up about these things that are bothering us, we're going to grow in unhappiness and resentment, and that will lead us nowhere good. So that's one thing important to know. The other is that holding your feelings in, just hoping they'll go away, is also not good, right? And it could end in a big blowout. And a lot of times when that happens, your husband's completely blindsided. He had no idea this was going on in your head, but for you, this is like your running mantra all the time. And so that argument does not end well. Your problem is not solved. And so then we are stuck with a mess to clean up. So I'm going to give you today a formula for having these difficult conversations. And before we have this conversation, I'd like to say we're going to get clear on what's really going on. We're going to check in with God, and we're going to check in with ourselves. We need to assess the situation before we just go and have a conversation. So I hope you have pen and paper with you today, because I want to give you some very practical, usable tips. I want you to be able to walk away from this call today ready to work on tackling an issue that might be bothering you in your marriage. So if you've got something brewing under the surface, the first thing you're going to do is take some time to sit down and write about it. Write, what is the thing that's bothering you? Why is it bothering you? What do you wish your husband would do? What do you wish he would stop doing? How does it make you feel that he's doing these things? Get all of this stuff out onto paper. I want you to trust me on this. Take the time to write down what's going on. It's not enough just to think about it or stew on it. It's not, I promise you. That only leads to a hurricane in your head. There is truly something magical and divine that happens when you sit down with a pen and paper And I would suggest, check in with God first. You say, God, please be present with me during this process. I want to vent my feelings out and sort through them and get to the bottom of it. Here's something that could be really good news. If you will do this, say it takes you 10, 15 minutes, this might be enough for you to realize that you don't actually need to talk to your spouse about this, that you can solve it on your own. Because you might come through and find, what are some different ways that I could handle this? So I think you've all heard me talk before about a client of mine whose husband never helped her carry in the groceries. Now, this is a minor thing, and I know you might have more major things, but easy to show you on a minor example. So her husband would never help her carry in the groceries. And so she spent time, like I'm asking you to do, writing about how it made her feel. And then she came up with options for how she could handle it. So one option might be to sit down and have a conversation with him, right? And we're going to talk about how to do that. One option might be she came up with asking him to go shopping with her. And so then when they got home, they would be together and they would both naturally empty the car of the groceries together. One might be just to be matter of fact and ask for help. And there were several others. She came up with like at least 7 different ways for how to handle the situation without having a blow up or an argument. And so that's one thing I want you to know. If you'll put the time into this, you might realize, okay, maybe I don't need to talk about him with it right now. Let me try this instead. But if you decide you really want to talk to him about it and it's important and you need to, this is how we're going to do it in a constructive way, okay? So many times, like we keep talking about this blow up, that's not constructive. He's not going to listen to you. His defenses are going to go up. So if you have something, the first thing that you want to do is let your spouse know that you need to talk with him about something important and find a mutually agreeable time. Ask him, when will be a good time for you to talk about this? Okay, so this is to prevent blindsiding him. So the next thing that you need to do is, if you haven't done it already, just revisit what you wrote about the situation and set an intention for your conversation. And this is important because we often are pretty selfish when we're in a state like this. And so I want you to set an intention that is something like, to seek to understand my husband better about this situation. Because what's happening is you have your perspective on what's happening, and your husband has a perspective on what's happening, or maybe he doesn't even know what you see happening, right? He might be completely oblivious. So what you want to do is understand each other and where he's coming from. So that's why I want you to set intention and write it down, to understand my partner better on this issue, or to communicate my feelings with peace on this issue. Okay, does that make sense? So you're setting your intention. Some people need to write out a few bullet points in advance of the conversation. I do this for big things because when emotion floods me during conflict, my brain freaks out and I forget what I want to say. And then the conversation ends and I don't feel fulfilled because I haven't got to say everything that I wanted to say. There's 2 ways you can look at that. You can look at that as, well, maybe you didn't need to say it then. Maybe it was resolved fine without it. Or maybe then you're like, like you feel unresolved. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. We want you to feel resolved. So that's up to you. You know your personality best. Personally, I like to write down a few bullet points of things that are important. The next step is that when you communicate with your husband, first of all, I would recommend doing it side by side, not necessarily face to face. If you could take a walk and talk about it, that would be great. But otherwise, maybe sitting next to him on the couch. Or if you guys are comfortable with it face to face, that's fine. But if you've listened to any of my other calls, you've heard me talk about the fact that that's really intense for men, like when we're staring in their eyes. I'm not saying never do it, but just check your marriage and check your husband out as you're having this conversation. Are you seeing a lot of unease from him when you're talking face to face? Would it be better to sit side by side? Just something to keep in mind. So the next thing is that when you are telling your husband how you feel, you are going to use I statements such as I feel. And you've heard this before. I know you have. but it's very important that we do not place blame. You want to say something like, I feel so frustrated when you don't help me carry groceries in. Or you do not want to say, you make me so mad when you sit there on the couch and you just watch me carry the groceries in. Do you see the difference? When you say, I feel so frustrated when I carry in the groceries all by myself because it's hard and they're heavy and I'm tired. That's all you. That's all on you. You're just saying how you feel. But when you say, you make me so mad, that's blame. And when you use that blame, your husband is going to throw up his defense shield. It is instinctual. He cannot help it. I statements are a very powerful way for you to state what you're thinking and feeling. And that's what you want, isn't it? You don't really want to be placing blame. What you want is to say how you feel and let your partner know what you want. So this is really important because I statements are not placing judgment on your husband for being wrong or blame or expectations. This, for many of us, is where we're going wrong in our difficult conversations. We're throwing the blame all over the place, and that never leads to resolution. It never leads somewhere good because their defense mechanisms go right up. When we use I statements, we take responsibility for how we are feeling. So this is totally the opposite of a you statement, right? When you say, you make me so mad. When you say you statements, you put your husband on the defensive. It's judgmental, it comes off as demanding, and it is not going to get us the result that we want. So I have a little formula for how to write an I statement. I found this in a book called Marriage Meetings for Lasting Love. It's a great book, by the way. So the formula for an I statement. Number one, state how you feel about the behavior. State how you feel about the behavior. Number two, name the behavior. So number two is name the behavior. Number three, suggest what you want or don't want to see happen. So again, number three is suggest what you want or don't want to see happen. Number four, this one's optional, of if there's a warning of a consequence if the behavior continues. And I want to give you a red flag on the consequence one. This is not a threat toward your partner, like I'm going to leave you or I'm going to kick you out. That's not the kind of consequence we're talking about, okay? So we're going to go through an example, and I'll show you what I mean. The example is the wife is frustrated because her husband is not taking out the trash. And so she might say, number one, I feel frustrated when I have to ask you to take out the trash 3 or 4 times. So she's stating how she feels frustrated, and she's naming the behavior, and that is waiting to take out the trash until the 4th time she asks him. Then she says, I want you to take it out the first time I ask. So that's the behavior that she wants to see happen. And she says, I don't want to nag you. Like, you can hear her frustration. She doesn't want to have to nag him. That's still with number 3. That's what she doesn't want to happen. And she does give a consequence here. She says fruit flies are going to gather in the kitchen if the garbage stays inside too long, or it's going to get smelly, it grosses me out, like something like that. So she's not saying, and her consequence, she's not saying any threat toward her husband. She's saying, like, why, basically, why this behavior is bothering her. Okay, so that was 4 steps for your I statement. Number 1, state how you feel about the behavior. Number 2, name the behavior. Number 3, suggest what you want or don't want to see happen. Number 4, warn of a consequence if the behavior continues. And I also like to end with something nice or friendly, like, I really appreciate being able to rely on you for this. So if we just have to know to keep it positive and use these I statements so that we don't send up the red flags of the defense. our job, and you can see how well it's done with this little formula, is to communicate to them the facts as you see them and your feelings about them. And remember, our goal in marriage is to seek to understand each other, and we want to inspire cooperation. So if we're using this example of the garbage, we want to inspire a spirit of cooperation. But if we come at him with blame, he's not going to feel like we're looking for cooperation. He's going to look like we are wanting to control him. And this is going to send him off the deep end. Okay? So blame has no place in this conversation. It's not necessary. You're going to get so much further without it. Okay? While you're speaking to your husband, speak calmly. If you will do the work that I've recommended of journaling in advance of your conversation, this will help you speak calmly because you'll be able to get some of your anger out there. Like, go ahead and use, harsh language in your journal if you need to. Get that anger out there. Get it out there. That's the place for it, in privacy. But when you're with your husband, speak calmly. And during your meeting, stay on one topic. Don't go generalizing. Don't try to bring up other old unresolved hurts. This is so easy to happen. And sometimes your spouse might try to do it. So if he does try to blame you, if he still takes it the wrong way, even when you word it right, if he tries to bring up something else or make it bigger, just very calmly say, okay, I hear that you have something that you would like to talk about. Can we please schedule another time for this conversation? It's important for me to hear what you have to say on that, but I think it would be most effective if we'll just stick to this one conversation right now and resolve this, and then let's move to that, okay? Because you've been there. I know. We have all been there. It's like a tangled mess, and you're making no progress. And the tempers really flare. So while you're speaking to your husband, while you're saying your I statement and explaining yourself, your spouse should let you fully finish what you have to say. There should be no interrupting, okay? Then, when you've said what you have to say, give your spouse a chance to reply. Do not interrupt him when he's talking. Give him that same courtesy and the same grace. Don't try to defend yourself or anything else. Just listen to what he says. I always recommend to my clients that they take notes while their spouse speaks to them because this helps you listen well. It helps you be more of an active listener. So be sure to be taking those notes, listening. And then once he finishes what he has to say, then you can have another turn to continue what you have to say. Remember to stay calm. Stick with your I statements. Repeat back to him what you're hearing. Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is this. And you might be surprised that you're going to get some reasons from your husband for his behavior that are, in his mind, perfectly logical. Maybe in your mind it's not logical, and that's okay. Like, you're not to be judging him for that. He's making a decision that seems logical to him. And so respect that as you go through your conversation. And remember that your goal is for each of you to feel understood. So you should continue your discussion, each taking turns talking, until each of you feels heard and understood. And hopefully, ideally, you're going to find an agreement on how to handle the problem, right? But if for some reason it's just too much, it's just too big, or the tempers are starting to flare, you've gotten off track, call a timeout. Agree to come back to this another time when everyone has had time to calm down. Because once you get into the tempers flaring, you're not going to be very productive, right? So I do want to throw in there, if it's something really big, we're talking about little stuff here today, like taking out the trash. If you've got a really big problem coming on or a really big, experience in your marriage, then you might consider talking with a third party present with you, like with a mediator or, a trusted marriage mentor or, even a marriage counselor, so you can both be in the same room. The thing with having that third party there on the big issues is if you if one of you is getting on a line and being selfish and blameful, that third person can call you out on it and kind of help bring the conversation back to a constructive state. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. And you know what, guys? Sometimes, I should say, you know what, girls? Sometimes we have situations in our marriage that are kind of unresolvable. I'm talking little things here, not big, huge things. And sometimes we just have to agree to disagree or really find ways of working with things. And those don't make your marriage a deal breaker, unless it's something really severe, of course. So I think if we can all remember that our spouse is our partner, not our enemy. Sometimes it's like a battle in our home instead of a spirit of cooperation, and our selfishness comes over us, and we just attack our partner. And that's not what we want. It's not what we mean to do, but we're just letting our stress and the busyness of life get the best of us. And so let's try this. Let's try slowing down, writing out our feelings, praying about it, thinking about it, and seeing where to go from there. And I think that you'll find a much more peaceful state of marriage, a much happier, easygoing state of marriage. And I want that for you. So as you can see, marriage is something really important to me, and I'm passionate about helping women. So if you need some help working on this, I would love to help you. Please reach out to me. That ends the formal portion of today's conversation. Remember that I have a free mini marriage makeover that will really help you with these difficult conversations. It's on my website, tinaheisman.com. And don't forget to join me in the Happy Wives community on Facebook for positive inspiration. Also, I offer one-on-one marriage coaching, so stop by my website or email me to learn more. All right, ladies, thank you so very much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day.